Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the diplomatic vessel Terra's Voice, watching the stars blur past through the main window. His hands rested on the rail as he thought about the message that had arrived 3 hours ago. The message that changed everything. Captain called Dr. Lisa Carter from her station. The xenobiologist's voice was tight with anger. The reports from New Haven are confirmed. All of them. Jake closed his eyes for a moment. New Haven colony had been home to over 2 million people, families who had fled from previous Zephyrian attacks, children who had never seen Earth, elderly couples who just wanted to live in peace among the stars. Now they were all gone. "Show me," Jake said quietly. The main screen lit up with images that made the bridge crew go silent. The orbital bombardment had lasted for 6 hours. The Zephyrians had broadcast it live across the galaxy, like some twisted entertainment show. They wanted everyone to see what happened to those who opposed them. They targeted the hospitals first, Dr. Carter said, her voice shaking. Then the schools. They saved the residential areas for last so people would know what was coming. Jake gripped the rail tighter. For 3 years, humanity had followed the rules. They evacuated civilians instead of fighting back. They sent aid to refugee camps. They tried diplomacy even when the Zephyrians laughed at their peace offers. The galaxy called them weak. The Zephyrian Empire called them cowards. Even some humans wondered if they should fight back harder. "Any word from Admiral Brooks?" Jake asked. "The fleet is holding position at the edge of Zephyrian space," reported Communications Officer Amy Walsh. "Still following defensive protocols only." Jake nodded. Admiral Ryan Brooks commanded the largest human fleet ever assembled. Hundreds of ships with crews who had watched their people die while being told to show restraint. Jake could only imagine how hard it was for Brooks to keep his people in line. "Captain," Amy said, "we're getting a priority transmission from Earth Command." "Put it through to my ready room," Jake ordered. "Dr. Carter, you're with me." The ready room was small and simple like most things on diplomatic vessels. Jake sat down at his desk while Dr. Carter took the chair across from him. The screen flickered to life, showing the seal of Earth's military command. "Captain Morrison," came the voice of General Patricia Stone, the ambassador's sister. "By now you've seen the reports from New Haven." "Yes, ma'am," Jake replied. "The Galactic Council has called an emergency session. Ambassador Helen Stone will address them in 6 hours. The session will be broadcast live across the galaxy as usual." Jake waited. He could tell there was more. "Captain, I'm authorizing Directive 7. Please confirm receipt." Jake's breath caught. Directive 7 was something every human military officer knew about but hoped they would never hear. It was the order that changed everything. "Directive 7 confirmed, General," Jake said. "Tell Admiral Brooks that all restrictions are lifted. Tell him to show them what our mercy has been protecting them from." The transmission ended, leaving Jake and Dr. Carter in silence. "Directive 7. Dr. Carter said quietly. "I never thought I'd live to see it." Jake stood up and walked to the small window in his ready room. Outside, he could see other human ships moving into formation. They looked peaceful enough, but Jake knew what they were really capable of. "Lisa, how many species in the galaxy understand what humans are really like?" Dr. Carter thought for a moment. "None of them. They see our restraint and think it's weakness. They don't understand that we choose to be peaceful because we know what war really means. And now they're going to learn." Meanwhile, on the massive council station, Ambassador Helen Stone was preparing for the most important speech of her life. The station was a marvel of engineering, built by dozens of species working together. Representatives from 47 different worlds worked here, making decisions that affected trillions of lives. Helen stood in her quarters looking at herself in the mirror. She was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes. Most aliens found her appearance comforting, which had served her well in negotiations. Today that would change. Her aide, a young man named Tony Evans, knocked on her door. "Ambassador, the Zephyrian delegate is already in the council chamber. He's making quite a show. What's he saying?" Helen asked, the usual. "Calling humans weak, saying we deserve what happened to New Haven. Some of the other delegates are starting to look uncomfortable, but none of them are speaking up." Helen nodded. This was expected. The Galactic Council was good at talking about peace, but they rarely acted when one species attacked another. They called it non-interference, but Helen knew it was really just fear. "Any word from my sister?" Helen asked. "General Stone sent a message 10 minutes ago. Just 2 words. Directive 7. Helen's expression didn't change, but Tony saw something shift in her eyes. Something that made him take a step back. Tony, send a message to Captain Morrison. Tell him to begin moving our ships into position. Also, contact Dr. Carter and ask her to prepare her presentation on human military history. Ma'am, that presentation is classified at the highest levels. Not anymore, Helen said. Today the galaxy learns who they've been dealing with. Back on Tara's voice, Jake was in communication with Admiral Brooks. The Admiral's face on the screen showed the strain of 3 years of holding back. Jake, my people are ready, Brooks said. We've been planning this operation since the first Zephyrian attack. Every ship captain knows their role. How long have you been preparing? Jake asked. Brooks smiled grimly. Since the day we made first contact with them. Human military doctrine is simple. Hope for peace but prepare for war. We've been watching, learning, and positioning assets for 3 years. The galaxy is going to be shocked. The galaxy is going to learn why every species in human space lives in peace, Brooks replied. They're going to understand that our mercy wasn't weakness. It was the only thing standing between them and what humans can really do. As Tara's voice approached the council station, Jake received reports from across human space. Ships were moving into position. Assets that had been hidden for years were coming online. Soldiers who had been disguised as merchants and refugees were receiving their activation codes. The galaxy was about to see something it had never witnessed before. Humanity with the gloves off. Jake looked at the council station growing larger on his screen. In a few hours, billions of beings across the galaxy would tune in to watch the emergency session. They expected to see humans begging for help, pleading for someone else to stop the Zephyrian attacks. Instead, they were going to see the day humanity's mercy ended. The Galactic Council chamber was the largest room on the station, designed to hold representatives from dozens of worlds. Today, every seat was filled. The attack on New Haven Colony had sent shockwaves across the galaxy, and everyone wanted to see how the Council would respond. Ambassador Helen Stone walked into the chamber with calm, measured steps. She wore a simple blue diplomatic uniform, nothing fancy or threatening. To most observers, she looked like a tired old woman carrying the weight of her people's suffering. They had no idea what they were about to witness. War Commander Tekvar of the Zephyrian Empire stood at his delegation's platform. His reptilian features twisted into what passed for a smile among his species. He was large even by Zephyrian standards, with dark scales and yellow eyes that seemed to glow with hatred. Honored Council, Tekvar announced in his harsh voice. The Zephyrian Empire has demonstrated once again why we are the dominant military force in this galaxy. The humans' pathetic colony was destroyed because they refused to accept their proper place. Several council members shifted uncomfortably, but none spoke up. The Karathi representative, a tall, blue-skinned humanoid named Deltar, looked particularly troubled. His people had been victims of Zephyrian aggression before, but they lacked the military power to resist. The destruction of New Haven, Tekvar continued, was broadcast live so that all species could see the price of opposing us. Humans are weak. They evacuate instead of fighting. They send aid instead of weapons. They are unfit for galactic civilization. Council Speaker Vestan, an ancient being whose species had founded the Council centuries ago, called for order. The emergency session will now hear from the human representative. Helen Stone stepped forward to the central platform. Camera drones from hundreds of news networks focused on her, broadcasting her image to billions of beings across the galaxy. This was how the Council maintained transparency. Every session was streamed live to anyone who wanted to watch. Honored Council, Helen began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's speakers. For 3 years you have watched my people die. You have seen our colonies burned, our ships destroyed, our civilians murdered. You have watched all of this and you have done nothing. The chamber fell silent. This was not the pleading they had expected. You have told us this is a bilateral dispute. You have said that non-interference is the highest principle of the Council. You have advised us to seek peaceful solutions while our children were being slaughtered. Helen activated her holographic display. Images filled the air above the chamber. Images of destroyed human settlements, burning ships, and mass graves. These are the peaceful solutions you recommended, Helen said. 2,300,000 civilians died on New Haven. The youngest victim was 3 years old. Her name was Katie Roberts, and she died in her mother's arms while Zephyrian soldiers laughed. Dr. Lisa Carter, watching from the human observation area, saw several council members look away from the images. The Altarian delegate, a gentle species that resembled large insects, was visibly distressed. "You have mistaken our restraint for weakness," Helen continued. "You have watched us evacuate our people instead of fighting back, and you have assumed we could not fight back. Today that assumption ends." War Commander Thekvar laughed, a sound like grinding metal. "More human words. Where are your mighty weapons? Where is your great fleet? All I see is an old woman making empty threats." Helen turned to face him directly. "Commander Thekvar, you have asked to see our weapons. Your request is granted." She touched a control on her podium. "Captain Morrison, begin the demonstration." Across the galaxy, beings watching the broadcast saw the image shift to show space near Zephyrian territory. At first, there seemed to be nothing there, just empty space with a few scattered asteroids. Then the asteroids moved. What had appeared to be space debris suddenly revealed itself as camouflaged human ships. Hundreds of them, positioned throughout Zephyrian space, ships that had been invisible, waiting in perfect silence for months. Captain Jake Morrison's voice came over the broadcast. "Council Station, this is Terra's voice. Human fleet assets are now revealing positions throughout Zephyrian space. We count 437 ships in the immediate area." The council chamber erupted in shocked voices. The Zephyrian delegation stared at the display in disbelief. Their own sensors had detected nothing. "Impossible," Thekvar snarled. "Our detection systems are the most advanced in the galaxy." Dr. Carter stood up in the observation area. "Speaker Vexen, with permission, I would like to address the council." "Permission granted," the ancient being replied. Clearly fascinated by what was unfolding, Dr. Carter walked to a secondary platform. "Honored delegates, I am Dr. Lisa Carter, xenobiologist and specialist in human military history. You are witnessing something that no other species has ever seen: humanity's actual military capability." She activated her own display, showing historical data about human conflicts. "Every species in this chamber wages war for territory, resources, or dominance. Humans learned to wage war for survival. This created a very different kind of military evolution." The display showed images of ancient human battlefields, then progressed through their technological development. Humans developed concepts that most species find incomprehensible. Totalva, scorched earth tactics, mutually assured destruction. We became so efficient at killing that we had to develop moral frameworks to control ourselves. Council members leaned forward, trying to understand what they were hearing. "The human ships you see on screen represent less than 3% of their actual military assets," Dr. Carter continued. "What you call their main fleet is actually their peacekeeping force." War Commander Thekvar slammed his fist on his platform. "Lies! If humans had such power, they would have used it by now." Helen Stone smiled for the first time since entering the chamber. It was not a pleasant expression. "Commander, we have been using it. Every day for 3 years we have used our greatest weapon against you." "What weapon?" Thekvar demanded. "Our restraint," Helen replied. "Our choice not to show you what we are really capable of. That choice has protected not just you, but every species in this galaxy." Admiral Ryan Brooks' image appeared on the display, broadcasting from his command ship, Earth's Shield. "Council Station, this is Admiral Brooks. Human fleet commanders are requesting permission to demonstrate our defensive capabilities." "Demonstrate how?" Speaker Vexen asked. "War Commander Thekvar has announced his intention to destroy Earth itself," Brooks replied. "We would like to show the Council why that is not possible." Thekvar's eyes widened. "I made no such announcement." "You made it 15 minutes ago," Helen said calmly. "Your message to the Zephyrian High Command was intercepted by our intelligence services. You ordered the immediate targeting of Sol System and the execution of all human prisoners in Zephyrian custody." The chamber went completely silent. Even the camera drones seemed to hover motionless. "That information was encrypted with our highest level security codes," Thekvar said slowly. "Yes," Helen agreed. "It was." The implications hit the Council like a physical blow. If humans could intercept and decode Zephyrian military communications in real time, what else could they do? Dr. Carter spoke again. "Honored Council, you are about to witness something unprecedented in galactic history. You are about to see a species that chose peace demonstrate why that choice was so valuable." Helen Stone looked directly into the main camera. knowing that her words were being heard by trillions of beings across the galaxy. To every peaceful species watching this broadcast, you are under human protection. To every aggressive species watching this broadcast, you are about to learn why attacking civilians is no longer an option. She turned back to War Commander Thekvar. Commander, your empire has one opportunity to surrender unconditionally. You have 30 seconds to decide. Thekvar's laugh was desperate now. Surrender to you? You are nothing. The Zephyrian Empire has conquered 100 worlds. 29 seconds, Helen said quietly. The council chamber held its breath. Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched their screens in fascination and growing horror. 15 seconds. Thekvar raised himself to his full height. The Zephyrian Empire bows to no one. We will destroy Earth and every human in the galaxy. Time's up, Helen said. She nodded to the camera. Admiral Brooks, you are authorized to proceed. Show them what they've been protected from. Admiral Ryan Brooks stood on the bridge of Earth's shield, looking at the tactical display that showed 17 star systems. For 3 years, he had watched his people die while following rules of engagement that protected their enemies. Today, those rules no longer applied. All ships, this is Admiral Brooks, he announced on the fleet-wide channel. Operation Daybreak is now active. Remember your targets, remember your training, and remember New Haven. Lieutenant Commander Amy Walsh piloted the lead attack ship in the fleet approaching Kethvar Prime, the Zephyrian military world where the New Haven attack had been planned. Her squadron of 12 ships looked tiny compared to the massive orbital defense platforms surrounding the planet. Control, this is Lightning Squadron, Amy reported. Beginning attack run on Kethvar Prime. The Galactic Council broadcast continued to show multiple views of the operation. Council members watched in growing amazement as the human ships moved with a precision they had never seen before. Back in the council chamber, Dr. Lisa Carter provided commentary for the stunned delegates. What you are seeing is called combined arms warfare. Every human ship knows exactly what every other ship is doing. They have been rehearsing this operation for months. On the display, Amy's squadron approached the first orbital platform. The massive Zephyrian structure bristled with weapons and had a crew of over 10,000. It had taken the Zephyrians 5 years to build and was considered unbreakable. Amy's ship fired a single missile. The orbital platform simply disappeared. Not destroyed in a massive explosion, but completely disintegrated in a flash of light that lasted less than a second. What kind of weapon was that? Gasped the Karathi representative. A standard human precision strike munition, Dr. Carter replied calmly. What you just witnessed is considered basic equipment in the human military. War Commander Thekvar stared at the screen in disbelief. Impossible. That platform had shields rated for anything short of a star going nova. Commander, Ambassador Helen Stone said, you are beginning to understand the problem. Your best defenses are our basic weapons. The attack continued with mechanical precision. Amy's squadron moved through the orbital defenses like they were training targets. Each platform that had taken years to build vanished in seconds. The Zephyrian defenders tried to return fire, but the human ship seemed to know where every shot would go before it was fired. How are they doing that? Demanded the Altarian delegate. Pattern recognition and predictive algorithms, Dr. Carter explained. Humans have been studying Zephyrian tactics for 3 years. Their computers can predict enemy movements with 97% accuracy. Colonel Steve Parker commanded the stealth fighters that had been hidden throughout Zephyrian space. His pilots had been living on their ships for months, waiting in perfect silence while disguised as asteroids or space debris. Ghost Squadron, begin Phase 2, Steve announced. Across 7 different star systems, human fighters emerged from hiding. They had been positioned near every major Zephyrian military base, every fleet concentration, every command center. The Zephyrians had been surrounded for months without knowing it. The Zephyrian Home Fleet, considered the most powerful military force in the galaxy, tried to respond to the human attack. Admiral Crickster commanded over 300 heavy battleships, each one larger than anything in the human fleet. Destroy the human ships. Crickster ordered. Show them the power of the Empire. The massive Zephyrian battleships opened fire with enough energy to crack a moon. The space around the human ships lit up with weapons fire that could be seen from several light years away. When the light faded, every human ship was exactly where it had been before. Undamaged. Shields? Asked the Vorthak representative, a being whose species had invented energy shielding. No shields, Dr. Carter replied. Human ships don't use energy barriers. They use something much more effective. What? They simply weren't there when the weapons fired. The council members looked confused until they saw the replay in slow motion. The human ships had moved at the exact moment the Zephyrian weapons fired, letting the energy beams pass harmlessly through empty space, then return to their original positions. The human computers calculated the precise trajectory of every weapon and moved their ships out of the way, Dr. Carter explained. From the Zephyrian perspective, it looked like they were shooting at ghosts. Colonel Parker's stealth squadron struck back. Their weapons were different from Amy's precision munitions. These were designed to disable rather than destroy. The massive Zephyrian battleships suddenly found their engines dead, their weapons offline, their communications cut. "We call this suppression warfare," Dr. Carter told the council. "The goal is not to kill the enemy, but to make them completely helpless." Admiral Krickstar found himself commanding 300 ships that couldn't move, couldn't shoot, and couldn't even send distress signals. His entire fleet had been neutralized in less than 4 minutes. Captain Jake Morrison's voice came over the broadcast from Terra's voice. "Council station, the Zephyrian home fleet has been disabled. Casualty count 0. All enemy personnel are alive and unharmed." War Commander Thekvar's scales had turned pale yellow, a sign of extreme stress in his species. "You're not killing them?" "Why would we?" Helen Stone asked. "Dead enemies can't surrender. Disabled enemies can be reasoned with." The attack on Kethvar Prime continued with the same impossible precision. Amy's squadron targeted every military installation on the planet, but something strange was happening. The human weapons seemed to be carving around civilian areas. "Lightning Squadron to control," Amy reported. "All military targets on Kethvar Prime have been neutralized. Civilian areas remain untouched." The display showed aerial views of the planet's surface. Every military base, every weapons factory, every orbital communication array had been destroyed. But the cities, hospitals, schools, and residential areas showed no damage at all. "How is this possible?" asked Speaker Vexen. Dr. Carter smiled. "Human precision warfare technology. Our weapons can strike a single room in a building without damaging the rooms next to it. We can destroy a military base while leaving the civilian hospital across the street completely unharmed." Major Kate Sullivan led the ground forces that had been infiltrating Zephyrian space for years. Her soldiers had entered the Empire disguised as refugees, merchants, and aid workers. They knew every important target, every key installation, every critical system. "Ground teams begin Phase 3, Kate announced. Across dozens of worlds, human soldiers emerged from hiding. They moved through Zephyrian military installations with the same precision their ships showed in space. Guards were stunned unconscious. Weapons were disabled. Communication systems were shut down. "We call these suppression teams," Dr. Carter explained to the increasingly nervous council. "Their mission is to remove an enemy's ability to fight without causing unnecessary casualties." The efficiency was terrifying. Zephyrian soldiers who had terrorized the galaxy for decades found themselves helpless against opponents who seemed to know their every move. The humans struck with such speed and precision that most Zephyrian troops never even saw their attackers. "How long have these soldiers been in position?" asked the Karathi representative. "Since the first diplomatic contact 3 years ago," Helen Stone replied. "We hoped we would never need to use them." Admiral Brooks appeared on the main display again. "Council Station Operation Daybreak Phase 1 is complete. Zephyrian military capability in the targeted systems has been reduced by 87%. Human casualties, 0. Zephyrian civilian casualties, 0. Zephyrian military casualties, minimal." The council chamber was completely silent. Even the camera drones had stopped moving. "Admiral," Helen Stone said, "please provide casualty estimates for full-scale operations. If we proceed to Phase 2, we estimate we can eliminate 99% of Zephyrian military assets within 6 hours. If we proceed to Phase 3, we can occupy every major Zephyrian world within 18 hours. Total estimated casualties, less than 1% of their military personnel." War Commander Thekvar's voice was barely a whisper. "How?" Dr. Carter looked at him with something almost like pity. "Commander, your species learned to fight for conquest. You developed weapons to destroy and tactics to kill. Humans learned to fight for survival. We developed weapons to win and tactics to end conflicts permanently." She turned to address the council. What you have witnessed today is not human military power. This is human restraint. We have shown you exactly enough to demonstrate why resistance is futile, while causing the minimum possible harm to your people. Helen Stone spoke to the camera, knowing her words would reach every corner of the galaxy. To every species watching this broadcast, this is what human mercy has been protecting you from. Not our anger, not our weapons, but our efficiency. She looked directly at War Commander Thekvar. Commander, you have one more chance to surrender. The alternative is Phase 2. Thekvar's yellow eyes darted around the chamber looking for support that wasn't there. Every council member was staring at him with expressions ranging from pity to outright fear. What happens in Phase 2? He asked quietly. Phase 2, Admiral Brooks replied, is when we stop being gentle. War Commander Thekvar stood in silence for nearly a full minute, his yellow eyes fixed on the display showing his disabled fleets. The council chamber held its breath while billions of beings across the galaxy waited for his response. Finally, he straightened to his full height and bared his fangs in defiance. The Zephyrian Empire does not surrender to inferior species. I hereby order the immediate execution of all human prisoners and the deployment of our Nova bombs against Earth itself. The words had barely left his mouth when alarms began, blaring throughout the council station. Emergency lights flashed red as station security detected massive energy signatures approaching from hyperspace. Ambassador Helen Stone didn't even blink. Commander, you just made the worst mistake in your species' history. Captain Jake Morrison's voice came over the communication system, calm and professional. Council station, we are detecting Zephyrian ships approaching your position. Please move to emergency stations while we handle this threat. The main display shifted to show space around the council station. 3 massive Zephyrian dreadnoughts had just exited hyperspace, their weapons already charging for an attack on the station itself. They're targeting the station, gasped the Altarian delegate. There are civilians here from dozens of worlds. Admiral Ryan Brooks appeared on screen from his command ship. Confirmed. Zephyrian vessels are preparing to fire on the council station. All human ships. This is now a rescue operation. What happened next defied everything the galaxy thought they knew about space combat. Human ships appeared around the council station as if they had materialized from nothing. Not the slow emergence from hyperspace that every other species used, but instant arrival at precise coordinates. One moment space was empty, the next it was filled with human warships. Commander Tony Evans led the close protection squadron that surrounded the station. His ships moved between the Zephyrian dreadnoughts and the station with impossible speed and precision. Station Control, this is Guardian Squadron. You are now under human protection. Please maintain position while we resolve the situation. The lead Zephyrian dreadnought fired its main weapon, a beam of energy capable of destroying a small moon. The beam struck what appeared to be empty space and simply vanished. What happened to their weapons? Demanded the Vorthak representative. Dr. Lisa Carter consulted her readings. The humans aren't blocking the energy. They're redirecting it into dimensional space. The weapons fire is still traveling, just not in our reality. The impossible had become routine. Human technology wasn't just advanced. It was operating on principles that other species hadn't even discovered yet. Major Kate, Sullivan's voice came over the communication system from somewhere inside Zephyrian space. Control, this is Deep Strike Team Alpha. We have located the Zephyrian prison facilities. Request permission to proceed with prisoner extraction. Permission granted, Admiral Brooks replied. Rules of engagement are now full combat authorization. The display showed feeds from across the Zephyrian Empire as human soldiers moved to rescue their captured people. These weren't the careful suppression missions from earlier. This was humanity fighting without restraint. Zephyrian. Guards who had tortured human. Prisoners found themselves facing opponents who moved like ghosts and struck like lightning. The humans didn't just fight. They flowed through enemy positions like water, impossible to pin down or predict. These soldiers are moving too fast, observed the Karathi delegate. No biological being can react that quickly. Enhanced combat systems, Dr. Carter explained. Human soldiers can think and move several times faster than baseline when necessary. What looks like superhuman ability to you is standard equipment for them. War Commander Thekvar watched his empire's defenses crumble in real time. Every report was worse than the last. Human forces were appearing everywhere at once, striking with such overwhelming superiority that resistance was becoming impossible. "How many ships do they have?" he whispered. Colonel Steve Parker answered from his stealth fighter. "Commander, you're asking the wrong question. You should be asking how many ships we need." The display showed a tactical overview of the entire conflict. Red dots represented Zephyrian forces. Blue dots represented human forces. The humans were outnumbered by more than 50 to 1, but the red dots were disappearing at an alarming rate. "Impossible," Tekvar said. "No species can fight against such odds." "Most species fight to win battles," Dr. Carter replied. "Humans fight to end wars. There's a significant difference in approach." Lieutenant Commander Amy Walsh led her squadron in the assault on the Zephyrian Command Center. The facility was buried deep underground and protected by the most advanced defenses the Empire could build. "Lightning Squadron, beginning penetration of enemy command bunker," Amy reported. "Estimated time to target 30 seconds. The facility's defenses opened fire with everything they had. Energy beams, missiles, particle weapons. Enough firepower to level a city. Amy's squadron flew through it all as if the weapons weren't even there. How are they avoiding all that incoming fire?" asked Speaker Vexen. "They're not avoiding it," Dr. Carter said. "They're calculating optimal flight paths through it. Human computers can map every trajectory and find the safe route through any defensive pattern." Amy's ships dove straight down through kilometers of solid rock, their weapons carving a perfect tunnel as they descended. They reached the command center in exactly 30 seconds as predicted. "Lightning Squadron to control," Amy announced. "Zephyrian Command Center has been secured. Enemy leadership is alive and requesting terms." Admiral Brooks appeared on the main display again. "Council Station, we have received surrender offers from 17 Zephyrian worlds. However, we have also detected preparations for Nova bomb deployment against civilian targets." The chamber fell silent. Nova bombs were weapons of absolute destruction, capable of igniting a planet's atmosphere or triggering a star to go supernova. They were banned by every civilized species. "Admiral," Hellenstone said, "please proceed with Protocol 9. "Confirmed. All ships, this is Admiral Brooks. Protocol 9 is now active. Show them what total war means." What followed was beyond anything the galaxy had ever witnessed. Human ships that had been moving with careful precision suddenly exploded into action with devastating efficiency. The restraint was gone, replaced by something that made the previous attacks look gentle. Major Kate Sullivan's ground teams stopped taking prisoners. Zephyrian military installations didn't just get disabled, they got completely eliminated. The humans began demonstrating weapons and tactics that defied comprehension. "This is impossible," Tekvar said, his voice breaking. "No species can project this much power across such distances." "Commander," Dr. Carter said gently, "you still don't understand. This isn't projection of power. This is local application of force. We've been inside your territory for 3 years." The truth hit the Council like a physical blow. The humans hadn't just hidden some ships in Zephyrian space. They had built an entire military infrastructure there. Supply bases, communication networks, staging areas for equipment and personnel. "Every refugee camp we established," Hellenstone explained, "every aid station we built, every diplomatic mission we sent, they were all part of a military operation. We were preparing for this day, while hoping it would never come." Commander Tony Evans reported from his position near the Council Station. "Control Zephyrian Nova bomb deployment has been prevented. All strategic weapons have been secured or destroyed." "How did they stop weapons on planets they've never visited?" asked the Vorthak delegate. Dr. Carter pulled up a new display showing the Zephyrian weapons storage facilities. Human soldiers were visible in every single one, having apparently appeared from nowhere. "We've been there all along," she said simply, "disguised as maintenance workers, supply personnel, even prisoners. When you torture someone, you rarely pay attention to who's cleaning your facilities." The systematic dismantling of the Zephyrian Empire continued with mechanical precision. Their fleets were disabled, their command centers captured, their weapons destroyed. But the most shocking aspect wasn't the speed or efficiency, it was the casualty count. "Current Zephyrian military casualties," Admiral Brooks reported, "stand at less than 2%. Civilian casualties remain at 0. War Commander Thekvar stared at the display in confusion. "You're not killing us?" "Why would we?" Hellenstone asked. "Dead enemies can't work to rebuild what they've destroyed. Dead enemies can't pay reparations to their victims. Dead enemies can't serve as examples to others who might consider similar actions. The final blow came when Captain Morrison appeared on screen with a special report. Council Station, we have secured the Zephyrian High Command. Their leadership is requesting immediate peace negotiations. The displays showed the interior of the Zephyrian Empire's most secure facility. Human soldiers stood guard over a dozen Zephyrian officials who looked thoroughly defeated. How did you get inside our most protected installation? Thekvar demanded. Captain Morrison smiled. Commander, we helped design your security systems. Every defensive measure you've built in the last 3 years was based on technology we provided through intermediaries. The chamber erupted in shocked voices as the full scope of human. The Galactic Council chamber had never been so quiet. For the first time in centuries, not a single representative spoke. They all stared at the display showing the complete and total surrender of the Zephyrian Empire, accomplished in less than 6 hours with minimal casualties. War Commander Thekvar sat slumped in his chair, his yellow eyes vacant. The proud warrior who had terrorized the galaxy just hours earlier now looked like a broken old lizard. His empire, built over 3 centuries of conquest, had simply ceased to exist. Ambassador Helen Stone stood at the central podium, looking as calm as she had when the session began. To the casual observer, she appeared to be the same quiet diplomat who had entered the chamber. But everyone in the room now understood what lay beneath that peaceful exterior. Council Speaker, Helen said formally, the human delegation requests permission to address the surrender terms. Speaker Vexen, still processing what he had witnessed, nodded slowly. Permission granted, Ambassador Stone. Helen activated her display, showing a document that appeared to have been prepared long before today's events. The Zephyrian Empire will immediately cease all military operations. All occupied territories will be returned to their original inhabitants. All prisoners will be released unharmed. All weapons of mass destruction will be surrendered to human forces for disposal. She paused, looking directly at Thekvar. In addition, the Empire will provide full reparations to all victims of their aggression. This includes the families of those killed on New Haven Colony and every other world they have attacked. We accept these terms, Thekvar said quietly. You don't have a choice, Helen replied, not unkindly. But acceptance makes the process easier for everyone. Dr. Lisa Carter stepped forward with additional information. The Zephyrian military will be completely restructured under human supervision. We will provide training in defensive operations only. No Zephyrian ship will carry weapons capable of harming civilian populations. The Karathi representative Deltar raised a tentative hand. Ambassador Stone, what happens to species that have been victims of Zephyrian aggression? Many of our worlds are still occupied. As of 1 hour ago, all Zephyrian occupation forces have been disarmed and confined. Captain Jake Morrison reported from Terra's voice. Human peacekeeping forces are currently overseeing the withdrawal of all military personnel from occupied territories. Peacekeeping forces? Asked the Altarian delegate. How many ships does humanity have? Admiral Ryan Brooks appeared on the display from his command ship. Delegate, that information is classified. What I can tell you is that every peaceful species in the galaxy is now under human protection, whether they requested it or not. The implications were staggering. Humanity had just demonstrated the ability to project overwhelming military force across the entire galaxy. Simultaneously, they had infiltrated the most secure facilities, predicted enemy movements with perfect accuracy, and coordinated operations across dozens of star systems. And they had done it all while their supposed main fleet remained in human space. Apparently uninvolved in the conflict, Ambassador, Speaker Vexen said carefully. The Council needs to understand humanity's intentions. You have demonstrated capabilities beyond anything we imagined possible. What do you plan to do with this power? Helen Stone smiled, and for the first time since the session began, it was a warm expression. Speaker Vexen, humanity's intentions haven't changed. We want peace. We want to trade with our neighbors. We want to explore the galaxy and learn from other species. She gestured to the displays showing human ships throughout Zephyrian space. The only thing that has changed is that we will no longer tolerate others preventing us from achieving these goals. Lieutenant Commander Amy Walsh appeared on a side screen, reporting from the former Zephyrian homeworld. Council Station, this is Lightning Squadron. We have established humanitarian aid stations on 17 former Zephyrian worlds. Medical supplies and food distribution are beginning immediately. You're sending aid to your enemies? Asked the Vorthak representative in confusion. We're sending aid to people who need it, Dr. Carter replied. The Zephyrian military was our enemy. The Zephyrian people are potential allies who were trapped under a brutal government. Colonel Steve Parker's stealth forces were coordinating the establishment of new governments on the liberated worlds. Control, this is Ghost Squadron. Local populations are requesting human assistance in establishing democratic institutions. Many of these worlds haven't had free elections in over a century. The scope of the human operation was becoming clear. This wasn't just a military victory. It was a complete transformation of a significant portion of the galaxy. In 6 hours, humanity had ended a 3-century-old empire and begun rebuilding dozens of civilizations. How long have you been planning this? War Commander Thekvar asked weakly. Since first contact, Helen Stone replied. Every diplomatic meeting, every trade negotiation, every cultural exchange was part of our intelligence gathering. We hoped we would never need to use the information, but we prepared for the possibility. Major Kate Sullivan reported from the Zephyrian capital world. Control, we have secured all government archives. 3 centuries of war crimes documentation is now in human custody. Trials will begin within the month. Trials? Thekvar's voice cracked. You're going to put us on trial? War crimes don't go unpunished, Helen said firmly. But the trials will be fair, conducted according to galactic law, and focused on those who gave the orders rather than those who followed them. She turned to address the council. Honored delegates, humanity is establishing the Terran Peace Corps. This organization will be responsible for maintaining galactic security and preventing the kind of systematic brutality we have just ended. Speaker Vexen leaned forward. What authority does this organization have? The authority of strength, Admiral Brooks replied. Any species that attacks civilian populations anywhere in the galaxy will face the same fate as the Zephyrian Empire. The Karathi delegate Deltar stood up. On behalf of the Karathi Republic, I formally request human protection and alliance. Within minutes, representatives from dozens of species were making similar requests. The chamber filled with voices as delegates competed to align themselves with humanity. But not everyone was pleased with this development. This is tyranny, declared the hegemony representative, a militaristic species that had been expanding aggressively in a distant spiral arm. You cannot impose your will on the entire galaxy. Helen Stone looked at the hegemony delegate with the same calm expression she had shown Thekvar. Delegate, the Terran Peace Corps operates under simple rules. Species that live in peace have nothing to fear from us. Species that prey on others will find us very interested in their activities. Dr. Carter activated a new display showing intelligence reports from across the galaxy. We have been monitoring aggressive species throughout known space. The hegemony currently occupies 14 worlds that do not belong to them, and has enslaved the populations of 6 others. The hegemony delegate's face went pale. How could you possibly know that? We know everything, Captain Morrison said simply. The question is what you plan to do about it. Commander Tony Evans provided an update from the fleet positions. Control, hegemony military assets have been observed. We have detailed intelligence on their fleet positions, weapon capabilities, and strategic plans. The implied threat was clear. Humanity didn't just have the power to end the Zephyrian Empire. They had the power to end any empire that chose to follow the same path. The galaxy has new rules. Helen Stone announced to the watching billions. Peaceful species will be protected. Aggressive species will be contained. Predatory species will be eliminated. She paused to let that sink in. These rules are not negotiable. They are not subject to council debate. They are facts of existence enforced by human military power. Admiral Brooks made the final announcement. Effective immediately, all human-protected space is closed to military vessels from non-allied species. Trade ships and diplomatic vessels are welcome. Warships will be turned back at the border. The transformation was complete. In one day, humanity had revealed themselves as the galaxy's dominant military power and established themselves as its protectors. The age of strong species preying on weak ones was over. Any questions? Helen Stone asked the council. Speaker Vexen looked around the chamber at representatives who were still processing what they had witnessed. Ambassador, on behalf of the Galactic Council, I must ask, what guarantee do we have that humanity will not abuse this power? Helen Stone smiled one final time. Speaker Vexen, You have the same guarantee you've always had. Our choice to show mercy. She gestured to the displays showing human aid workers already helping Zephyrian civilians. Today you learned what happens when that mercy ends. Whether it begins again depends entirely on how the galaxy chooses to behave. Captain Morrison appeared on screen one last time. Council Station. All human forces are standing down to peacekeeping status. The galaxy is now under Terran protection. The broadcast ended, but the message was clear to every being who had watched. Humanity's greatest weapon had never been their technology or their tactics. It had been their choice to show restraint, and that choice would always remain in human hands.